Hello everyone and welcome to the second day of Sage. Very happy to see you all here. Hope that you get some time today to check out all of the amazing games we have in our showcase and our Elevate showcase. So to begin, I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains. We pay our respects to elders past and present, and would like to extend that respect to all First Nations people who are present here today. So we are here today for our panel, Big Ant Studios presents How and Why to Join a Game Studio. So we will be hearing from some of our luminaries from Big Ant Studios here in South Australia, and getting into some of the nitty-gritty of why you might want to join a game studio as part of your game career. So before we delve into it, let's introduce ourselves. So if we can go down the line, everyone says their name and what they do. My name is James O'Connor. I am the Game Development Executive at the SAFC. So I've been heavily involved in setting up a lot of Sage. I have been sending a lot of emails, and now I am happy to see a lot of people here.
Hi, I'm Kirsty. I'm the founder and director of a games, visual effects and animation staffing agency. We find people for studios all over Australia called Supaglu. I'm also treasurer of the South Australian Games Association, and if any of you don't yet have a ticket to the first ever South Australian Games Association Awards tonight, it's not too late to go and get a ticket. Go get a ticket.
Hi, I'm Michelle Fedornak. I'm a 3D animator at Big Ant Studios, so that means I make all the characters move and bring them to life. I'm also a lecturer for 3D animation for CDW Studios / Flinders University, which has been great. So I've been in the field for about 5 years now, and it's been really awesome. Pretty much my dream job.
Okay, and I'm Darren Cox. I'm an environment artist currently at Big Ant. And I guess what that basically entails is that anything that's not a character, so like buildings, levels, lighting, all sorts of things like that, texturing of that sort of assets and stuff, and props, that's sort of what I'm involved with. I studied through AIE online, and yeah, I'm also enjoying my job thoroughly. It's the start of a really good career.
Hi, my name is Mark Bracken. I'm the COO or Chief Operating Officer of Big Ant Studios. My job is essentially to make sure the company is running and running smoothly, and making sure our games get out on time and as to good quality. And I've been in the business for 35 years.
Very nice. So some history of Big Ant, and if I get any of this wrong, Mark, please interrupt me. But Big Ant was founded in 2001 in Melbourne and has released over 35 games since then. They opened an Adelaide studio in 2023, and some of their recent games include AFL 23, Cricket 24, Rugby 25, and Tiebreak, official game of the ATP and WTA, which is playable at Sage on a showcase floor. And I believe you have many other games in the pipeline, which you may or may not be able to discuss, so I'm not going to bring them up. So I would love to know from you, Mark, more about Big Ant's history in South Australia and what prompted the decision to open a studio here.
Good question. I think I originally arrived in Adelaide in 1999 to get involved with South Australia's first video game developer, which was Ratbag. And from my experience there, we were hiring people and we're getting people, and they were always coming from overseas, and we had the permanent visa system going on because we couldn't get local people. But one thing I noticed from the local people that we did get is that I felt that they always punched above their weight in terms of the quality of what they wanted to do, their mission statement, their drive was just phenomenal to me. So when the opportunity arose for us to look at where do we put our next studio because we want to expand, the first choice was Adelaide. And so looking at the process, we went through that with the government and looking at local industry, see where it was there, because at that time, at 99, it was one, and now it's over 100 developers. We wanted to see if there was an ecosystem. And that's probably the key thing about setting up a studio and moving forward with an industry is to have an ecosystem. And I was surprised to see that there were so many great educators. And now with CDW and AIE and Flinders, they were actually producing people that were specific to our industry. And I'm thinking, this is great. Because what that means is now I've got a pipeline of people that we can now train up. Because I think the fundamental reason of why we set up here is obviously we want to make games, but it's a training ground. You know, I see the studio here as a training ground for the indies of tomorrow. So we're hiring graduates. We've hired a lot of graduates since we've been here, and 95% of those people are local, which is amazing. And they're from different disciplines, whether it's character art, environment art and animation. We're starting with those disciplines first. But there are courses here and they're coming straight through. And what I expect is that they come on board, learn with us, do 2 or 3 years and then go and do their own thing if they want. If not, they stay with us. But the idea is for us to get people to grow the industry locally. And that was really the core part of why we did it.
I always love to hear Mark advocating for the talent in South Australia. So when you walk around stage today, you're going to see a lot of games by developers who have started indie projects, who are making their own games outside of a studio system. But quite often, if you look at the stories behind a lot of indie teams and the games they make, these are from people that have come through a studio system, who have gone to work for a larger studio, learned how they work, made some really interesting stuff, and then started up their own teams with that knowledge. So I would like to hear from each of you what you believe some of the advantages of working at a studio like Big Ant are, both in these short-term and in your long-term career. And this is something I know you're all going to have different perspectives and input on.
So one thing that I find great about working for such a big company like Big Ant Studios is that because, of course, we've got a lot of employees and we are spread across the 2 studios in Adelaide and Melbourne, there's just so many talented people who you can rely on and also meet, and you just get to have a much broader kind of networking ability. And you can also fall back on your colleagues a lot because there's so much knowledge, so much broad knowledge, which, of course, each of us is specialised in our own little niche, so animation for me. And if I need to know something outside of that, then it's really easy to go to someone else who will know that and will know so much about it. So it's really easy and great to collaborate in that way. So that's something I personally find really, really helpful.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess the other thing that sort of I have found is that I didn't expect was that I've learned a lot about how like the industry actually works. There's like lots of things that I didn't learn studying. Like I learned how to model, I learned all like the basic skills to get the job. But since I've started, I've learned so many things about like how a game is shipped. We ship a lot of games on consoles, so there's different steps to that. And there's, we've got someone here with like a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, and it's good to, even because we all sit down and have lunch together, and just like casual conversations over lunch, I've learnt so much about the process and how to run a business that sells games and makes games. So yeah, it's that's invaluable knowledge that that can be gained from working at a big studio.
Cool. Yep.
I'm biased, but the fact is that Big Ant, we do it a bit differently, and we not only develop games, but we actually sell them direct to retail. So we do the full turnkey thing. So we start, we make the game, then we do the packaging for the game, and then I'll sell it directly to locally here, JB Hi-Fi and EB. And so it's a full process from start to finish, but we also do that globally. So it's a little bit different. So we figured out over time that the best way to do this is to control all of the channels, so that way when we ship something, we know that people get to see it, and that the information that we give for that people see it in the light that we want it to happen, because we're the creators, we're the passionate ones at work, our blood, sweat and tears of every product that we ship, and it's just important that we sort of control that messaging straight through. And look, the other big thing is it's great and it's fun making games because it's an industry of change. And if you like change and there's something new all the time, then this is the industry for you.
I personally love as well because, of course, we work on sports games. That's something that's so kind of loved in Australia particularly. You know, we all love our sports teams. We love following that. And it's something that's so rewarding to be able to bring that, you know, an enormous kind of fan base and bring that right into people's little living rooms. And, yeah, it's really great to be a part of that. And knowing that we make so many people kind of so happy with that. Yeah, that's one of my most favourite things, for sure, yeah.
Excellent. I know Michelle and Darren, you both came to Big Ant through educational institutes. You went and studied what you are doing for your job. I would love to hear more about that and sort of the pathway through your studies through to game development.
So I originally started out studying as a visual artist, actually. I was going to be a painter, but that was really hard and it didn't quite work out. So I ended up doing another degree, and I went and studied at CDW Studios, which was great. I had a very broad kind of basis of my education there, which not everyone does, but that's what I did. So I learned a little bit about all aspects of the pipeline, and that in fact, if you want to work in games, it's not just, oh, I work at a games company and I just develop the whole thing. It's how each little piece of the puzzle kind of slots together and which piece I can become really good at. So I learned about kind of the whole pipeline and then decided, oh, animation's really for me, and that's the one that I wanted to follow. So that was what I put kind of all my energy and efforts into, becoming really, really good at that one kind of skill, which of course, you know, is lots of little skills built up together. But yeah, so that was really a really great process, and I learned so much there, and it set me up really well to be able to get into the industry. And I started out kind of more in the film end, doing stuff for film animations. But then I found my way into games, which is equally rewarding, and I have always loved both film and games, so that's why I was kind of interested in going into that industry to begin with. So it's really been rewarding for me as a journey that I managed to find my way here, going all the way from just wanting to be a general artist and not really knowing kind of where to go with that as a career, and then finding kind of my perfect little niche that I'm really happy doing now.
Yeah, I kind of took a bit of a long path to get to games, and it started like just from a love of games. I grew up playing games. I think my first console was a Sega Mega Drive, which gives sort of revealing my age a bit. But yeah, I started in like science, like nothing like completely unrelated to games at all. And then I did a whole bunch of other things, and then one day I just sort of decided like, wait, hang on, I can actually do that as a career. I can do that as a job. So I started while I was working. I went to AIE's online campus and learnt a whole bunch of skills there. I had a really great teacher who definitely drove home like the idea of specialization. They do a lot of like, I guess the first sort of thing is like giving you a lot of tastes of all the different parts of the industry. And yeah, I found environment art, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And yeah, so just drilling in on that, and so that was then. Yeah, from then I, after graduating, I worked on my portfolio and things like that, and I eventually saw an ad that began to open a studio in Adelaide, and yeah, and here I am.
Yay!
That's fantastic. So this is maybe more for Mark and Kirsty, but when you are looking at people who are looking to enter into studios, how much does their educational pathway sort of factor into, I guess, their application? And when you're looking at people, how is education something that helps them to stand out?
Yes and no. Isn't that a funny one? Yes, because when you've been working in the industry a while, you know which educational institutions specialise in what, and you know what you can expect from graduates who come from those particular courses, not just in South Australia, but in other states in Australia as well. So it matters. In the end, nothing matters more than your portfolio, really, in the end, if you're an artist. and your GitHub if you're a programmer. So even once you've graduated, if you keep pushing and take your education as something where you learn basic skills, and then once you graduate, just keep applying those skills, keep setting yourselves briefs, keep creating. And then, once you've graduated after a year or two, you might find that you have a completely different portfolio. So yes, it absolutely matters, but nothing matters more than how you use the skills that you learn and how you keep pushing. So what I really love to see is somebody who graduated a year ago and has a completely different folio or reel or body of work to what they had in their graduation portfolio, because that shows me the initiative and the passion that you have. So that's what you need to do. You need to keep pushing. So yeah, it matters. It also matters for one of the reasons that Mark raised is that if you go to a particular institution and you impress your lecturers, often people who want to hire graduates and juniors, they won't come to an agency like me. They tend to come to an agency like me for more senior roles. They'll go straight to the institutions and they say to the lecturers, who are your best students? Point us to your best students. And their best students could be not just creatively the best students or technically the best students, but the students who work well with others, who take direction well, who take feedback well, who employers know are going to work really well in their teams and fit really well in their teams. Because when you employ someone, particularly a junior, it's a risk. You don't know how they're going to work, and you're going to have to put a lot of time and effort into training them. So if you get that first reference from your lecturers, that can be really important. So it matters in that way too.
I'd like to know there are 2 university lecturers in the crowd, and I saw them turn and nod at each other as you were speaking. So yes, Mark.
Yeah, look, well done, by the way. That was very, very clear, Kirsty. I think education is absolutely fantastic. It's really, and it's important because you need to be able to do the job. And if you can go that route, then that's certainly very beneficial. But passion is the number one for me. Is really if you've got passion, then you'll learn. If you have that passion, you'll get the skills that you need to complete the task, complete the job, and you'll learn. So with us, we have sort of a 3-stage process for entry into the company. And the first one is obviously getting your CV, getting your folio right. We look at those things of where you've come from, and that tells us a lot. And I know that we're going to talk about that in a minute. But I think the second stage, so that we go through that and we do technical skills at that point. So we would give you a test. And whether it's either an art or an animation test, you go and do that test, you give that back to us, and then there will be your first interview. Usually that's with the art director. In the art stream, that would be the art. Obviously, if it's in animation, it'd be with the animation lead. If it's for programming, then it would be the CTO. So once that happens, that first interview, that's really the technical side. Then the second side is we meet the team. So Michelle's on that group, and we have 3 people usually from different disciplines to see if you play well with others, because it's this is a very important part, because when we're building teams, we're really building families, and we work so closely together. It's important that everyone gets on with everyone. So we want to make sure that people can communicate and work well within a team. We haven't really had much of a problem with that, but it's really important because in the longevity of things, we want people to respect everyone else that, and their roles in the company. And then the third interview is usually just with myself, and that's just to check all the other boxes to make sure that those things are in there. And usually that's just a people thing, just to make sure that I answer all their questions, that it's clear about what the role is, what they're going to be doing, and really just provide 110% clarity on what it is, and then talk salary. So that's sort of how it works.
Excellent. I would love to hear more from all of you about this when people are interviewing, and what sort of how you can tell somebody is going to be a good culture fit, how somebody can come across well during these discussions. I know I've done a little bit of this myself, and often the biggest green flag for me was that we could talk about things other than games, and they would still be able to be eloquent and enthusiastic. But I'd love to hear from all of your perspectives some of the some of the things you've noticed in interviews for people who you go on to hire or work with?
So I would agree with that just the ability to have a really regular conversation with someone gives you a great idea of, you're going to be able to work with this person, you're going to really get along. And definitely trying to have a sense of confidence when you're in those interviews as well. It really does come across, and it presents you in your best light, so to speak. And yeah, I want to find myself kind of almost bonding with someone straight away. That's how I know that I want to work with them. And that's when I pass them on, because I'm involved in the second kind of round of interviews, as Mike would have mentioned. And I also have that kind of unique perspective because I'm a lecturer as well, that I'm able to kind of suggest people that I have taught, which is really rewarding for me when I'm able to help them to get a job with us, such as I have. We've had 2 people that I've taught all the way from their first year of studies, starting with us this month, which has been really great. So, of course, I already knew them quite well, so it was probably an easier process for them to interview with me, but it was definitely really great to see them kind of come through and become the talented animators that they are today. And even when I'm interviewing other departments, that's still, very personality based. I'm very much just looking for people that I can have a good yarn with, I can have a little bit of a joke with, just kind of being yourself and coming across as a really nice, personable person.
That's an interesting one, because obviously interviewing people is what I do for a living, and I sometimes interview up to 15 to 20 people a week. And so if you multiply that by the amount of years I've actually been in the business, it's a lot of people that I've interviewed. And it's interesting, some people don't interview well at all, and they end up being fantastic employees. Interviews they're not a normal situation. And so one of the things that we do to try and take into account the fact that, particularly younger people can be very nervous. It can be often terrifying. Older people can be very nervous as well. I try and ask a lot of example-based questions, because that can be a really good way of helping people. So give me an example of a time where you have done X. Give me an example of a time where you solved a problem that nobody else could solve. Give me an example of a time where you got negative feedback and you had to do something to a piece of art that you didn't want to do, and what happened. And when I ask people to go through their folios rather than going through the whole thing or their reel, I ask them to give me an example of a piece in either their folio or a reel or a piece of programming or a situation that they found particularly challenging and how they overcame that. And that could be challenging artistically, it could be challenging technically, it could be challenging politically. Workplaces can be political, so everywhere can be political. So how do you overcome those challenges? So I try and ask those sort of kind of open-ended sort of situational questions, and that's actually a really good way of finding out how people operate and giving them a chance to really reflect on what they've done, rather than feeling like they're being grilled for a particular position. It's different. The way I have to interview is by definition different, because you are interviewing specifically for your studio and for your culture. And I'm not necessarily. I'm interviewing in general, and then what I do is studios come to me, and so it could be for all different kinds of roles and all different kinds of studios. So we try and really ask those broad, open-ended questions. Yeah.
I think that's an excellent point. Like, we're not looking to hire extroverts. We're not, you just need to be yourself. And that's the whole thing is that we're hiring individuals, and we're hiring you as an individual, and it's based on your merits, and everyone is different. And we have a lot of people that, socially don't necessarily connect from that point of view, but they love what they do. We obviously in the interviews we try and get that from them, so we can understand who you are as best we can. And for anyone that is going for interviews, just remember that's what the employer wants. They just want to know who you are. You've already, usually to get an interview, you've usually passed the first test of that we're interested because you have the skills. So you've already ticked that box, and you've had the education that we require, or if you haven't, you've got the passion. And then, it's really up to yourself to represent yourself the best we can. But you know what? That's really hard, because you've got someone there and you really want a job, and it makes you very nervous. But the deep breath breaths help. And it's just really just for us to know who you are and what you want to do, because we want to make sure that we can help you with your career. So it's not just a one-way street, it's a two-way street. We're wanting to know what you want so we can work with you and help you achieve your goals. Actually, Michelle's a good example. She came on with us and now she's moved up in the company within 12 months and now is sort of heading up our animation area in Adelaide. And she's just come a long way. So it's amazing. She made that very clear at the beginning of the interviews. Look, this is what I'd like to do. And so we're trying to help her with her career. As to where she goes from here, that's the world is her oyster. But my point is that we try and work with you so you get your goals. You know, it's really important. We just want you to work on our projects, and we'll give you tasks that relate to you and things that you like. You don't always get things that you like, but if we know certain things, then at least we can vary things around. So anyway, that's the way I feel about it.
I think it's probably also important to note that the industry itself tends to attract people who love computers and love games, and a really high proportion, I would think, of people who have like neurodivergence and, you know, different ways of approaching the world. And in my experience, the games industry absorbs those people brilliantly, actually. And in fact, I would say is largely built on the minds of those kinds of people. So it is an industry where if you have that kind of mind, that kind of thinking, you will probably find a home. So if you are shy, if you have spent your whole childhood in front of a computer because that's where you felt most safe, you will have to be a bit brave because you'll have to go out and talk to people and network, and but that's okay. There will be a lot of people like you who are just as terrified. And what Mark said is right. You know, they're not hiring you to be, you know, a sparkling wit or a personality. Like they're hiring you for you. And the industry values people who love what you love. And you will be there because of that passion more than anything. So don't feel that you have to come to an interview and, you know, be something you're not. You can go and be yourself. And if you are shy, that's okay. We can see that. We've interviewed lots of people. We can see that.
And a little piece of advice, if you ever end up being interviewed by any of the people on this panel, mention that you were here today and what you got out of it and how insightful and eloquent they were as well. So we'll wind things back a bit because we have quite a few young people in the audience. We likely have some parents. We have some people who are thinking about what their entry point into the games industry might look like. And I imagine a lot of the people here are very seriously considering about what their life would look like if they were to work at a studio like Big Ant. So if we imagine somebody who is young or new to game development and is just really trying to figure out how they should get started and how they should start working towards having a role like the jobs that Michelle and Darren have, what is some advice we could give to this hypothetical, theoretical person who I'm pretty sure is in the audience today? We can start with you, Mark.
I'll start. Okay. Look, I think you've got to find out what your joy. As soon as you find your joy, then you can share it. And your joy is we've got to work most of our lives, and we leave school and we really don't know what to do. We're not armed with that information yet. If you are, then that's fantastic, you know. But it's best to put yourself in front of a lot of different things, so you can find out where your joy is and what your passion is. Because once you do that, you have to work, as I said, most of your life, you might as well find something that you really, really love and then pursue it. And if first you fail, then you keep going. Because this is another thing, is that we've had a number of people that had graduated and they sort of applied to us and they didn't get through the first time. And they thought, well, that's it, it's over. And we're like, well, hang on, no, that's not true. Come back in 6 months, work on your skills and reapply. And we found how many people? I think it's about 4 people now that have come back after that period, and they've applied again, and now they have jobs with us. So, you know, find your joy, just go for it. Spend the time to make your craft. We can't do that for you. You can only do it for you. Be truthful to yourself, and hopefully you find that passion. If you don't the first time, then move to something else. Try something else. But it is a lifelong thing, and sometimes people don't figure it out until later. But the passion, if it is for games, you've just got to figure out where that is, because games is like any other business. There's so many disciplines that are within those companies. We have programmers, and within programming there's 4 different sections. Within art, there's 6 different sections. So, you might think, oh, but I just want to do this small part. Well, you know what? All the small parts make up to a full game. And so we need people that understand the small part, whatever that is. So once again, my thing is find your joy, practice it, and then get out there and go forward.
Yeah, and to add to that, I guess to get an idea of what you want to do, I think if you're at the stage where you want to learn this stuff, you don't know anything, doing some research into a good school can help, because they do give you that pick at the start to really almost like a tasting menu of what is on offer. And so that's a good way to get your idea of where you want to head. And I guess as you get towards the end of your studies, one thing I've mentioned before, portfolio is a really important part. So for artists, environment artists and character artists, there's ArtStation, which I'm not sure if most people hopefully know about that. If not, it's a website that lets you upload your portfolio. And I guess a good piece of advice for that would be to make sure if you are studying outside your studies, continue to work on things. And also if you know a specific studio you want to work for, to tailor your portfolio to that. For us at Big Ant, we tend to steer towards more realistic stuff, hyperrealism, because we're sports games. So if you tailor your portfolio to that, the people who are looking at your portfolio go, okay, this definitely is someone that is not they're in lockstep with what we want to do. So yeah, that would be my advice.
Mine would be just to be brave, and that can be really hard if you're not, if you're young and you're a bit shy, particularly when you leave and you're looking for your first job. Often the people who get the first jobs are the ones who are sort of brave, who approach people at networking events, who don't give up, who go, oh my gosh, that was really scary going to that event. That's all right, I'm going to go again. And I'm going to, after a while, if you keep going to the events, people start to recognise you. So that's a completely different skill. Getting a job is a completely different skill to being a great artist or being a great developer, and it's incredibly difficult, and probably one of the things that most graduates that I see, some of whom are incredibly talented, really struggle to overcome. But it's a life skill, and this is a really great way to start to develop that. And again, you don't have to go to events and be sparkling. You can just go and see who's around, but apply for things. If you see a job and you think you've got a third of the skills, apply anyway. They might not get back to you, you might not hear from them, but your CV will be in there. There will be a record of your application, and then apply for the next one, and then apply for the next one. And I know that's hard, but it is actually eventually one of a barrage of different things that can work to get your first job. So getting your first job will be hard. It's hard in any industry, but it's particularly hard in an industry that people have a passion about, like games. A lot of people want to work in games. And so your actual skills and your tenacity will work together to help you get that first job. And it may not happen immediately. It might take 2 years. So yeah, try not to give up. Try to sort of keep going and be tenacious and brave.
Yeah, definitely that tenacity is really important, especially even just when you're developing your skills. I would say in my experience as a lecturer, the students I see who go on to be the most successful are the ones, as Kirsty was saying earlier, who keep pushing outside of their studies and keep improving their show reel or their portfolio, and don't just stick to, all right, well, that's the cutoff. I finished my studies. That's what I'm using. No, you want to keep making new and better and more improved things as you go, because you're going to keep learning. I mean, they say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything, right? So you've got to keep pushing and keep becoming that expert, and you'll end up making way better work. You'll look at your old work and think, man, what was I thinking, you know? And you'll always be improving both your eye, your ability to see what looks cool, and your ability to create it. So having that tenacity both in continuing to further your passion and what you're interested in, and then to continue to keep applying and keep looking for those roles, because it can be hard sometimes, but you've just got to keep trying. Otherwise, how else are you going to get that role? And it's definitely really devastating to hear people who just kind of give up quite soon when, you know, you never know. And the next job they applied to could have been the one for them. So it's really important not to lose heart and just keep pushing through with that. And ultimately it's, you know, to do what you love doing. So it's really rewarding when you do finally get up there and finally get the role that you want.
Does the panel have any, I guess, general advice on portfolios as people are building them? What sort of things stands out? What can a good portfolio really communicate about the person? Are there things that you see reoccurring in the portfolios of people who go on to work at Big Ant, for instance?
Look, it's the single entry point that you have, because at that point we don't know who you are other than what you tell us. So having a good summary of your skills, what your competencies are, you know, try and convey what you've done in your life, because obviously you're applying for a job and maybe you've finished your degree and you have a certain skill set. But we actually want to know, well, what have you done beforehand? You know, have you done some community work? How have you sort of, you know, who you are? Because it's very hard to do that in a single sheet. And to be honest, make it a single sheet, because I think sometimes people, I think I got one was 6 pages. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. It was great to read, but we don't have the time to do that. So it's best to summarise the best you can. And there's so many examples, and if you're studying, they should be teaching you how to do your CV. But until we actually meet you, that is the only way that you're going to get through. So make sure you cover everything that is relevant, which is your skills, sort of what you've done, your passion, because we want to know that, you know, you're interested in games. You don't have to be interested, in our case, in sport games. You don't have to be a sports enthusiast to work with us. You just have passion in the discipline that you choose to apply for.
Yeah, and the whole resume and folio thing, like, oh my God, that feels like it needs to be a talk in itself. Your resume, you can have more than one resume, and you should. You can also have more than one folio and reel. This is just such a big topic. I was on a panel yesterday, and one of the things that we were talking about resumes, particularly as you go through your career, I try to advocate using your resume as an answer to a brief. So you see a job and you go, okay, have a look at the job first. What skills are they looking for? Because the person who is recruiting that job, as Mark says, has very limited time, and they want to see what they're looking for. So if they are advertising for a 2D storyboard artist and you think you have those skills, put that at the top of your resume. Kirsty Parkin, 2D storyboard artist. And then the person looks at that and goes, oh my God, great, they're a 2D storyboard artist, fabulous. I need to keep reading, because they've seen what they're looking for right at the top. But you might also be applying for a job which is like, oh, hang on, I need a 2D environment artist, like a background artist. And that's what they're advertising for. So you put that at the top of your resume. Kirsty Parkin, Matt Painter, 2D background artist. And like, oh, fantastic. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So you can change your resume to reflect what they're looking for. You can still list the skills, because some of the skills for those 2 particular roles have crossovers, but there are some that are quite specific. So you can make sure that you can list the relevant skills that match their job description as much as possible. And you don't have to have all of them. But put in as many as you have and give them a good reason to see why you might be a good person for them to actually interview, and let them signal them to that very, very quickly. Because if you're looking at 200 resumes, you will stop at the one which tells you as quickly as possible that this might be the person that you're after. So your resume is an answer to a brief. Have a look at what the brief is. You can still have a general resume, which you might send out just blanket, and that really one is probably more a reflection of you and your skills. But just treat your resume as a living document and continue to update it in response to what you see. And the same thing with your folio. Like, one of the things that, particularly with younger people and folios, make sure that the work in your folio is finished to a point where you're happy with it. I personally find it frustrating to see sort of half-finished bits in people's folios, because to me it goes, well, why did you... Unless it's part of a specific work in progress which is documented, and if you haven't finished it, to me it says you shouldn't be showing something that's not finished, because it doesn't showcase your best skills. So I probably can't do this justice, actually, so I'll probably stop. But yeah, make sure that your folio has your best, most finished work that you're most proud of in it.
I just want to add on to that. I think that's a really good point. Sometimes it can be the weakest link in your portfolio that lets you down. Yeah. So because what you're showing in your portfolio or your show reel, kind of whatever's the worst thing on there, that's what you're telling recruiters or anyone that's your minimum acceptable standard, right? So if you feel like there's a weak piece, then just don't show it. Just fill it with your best work ultimately. It's better to have fewer really good pieces than to have a lot of kind of so-so pieces, right? So it's really important to definitely curate your portfolio like that as well, and definitely put forward the stuff that's most relevant to where you're applying first. So if you're applying to Big Ant, have you got realistic animation? I'm biased by like realistic modelling or whatever from an art point of view. Or have you got something sports related? Great, put that at the start. And, but if you're applying somewhere else, like to Blizzard and working on World of Warcraft or something, then you'd be putting really stylised things in. You'd be putting something completely different in. And the same can be said for the kind of different industries you can go into. And obviously we're games focused here, but people who are applying to a film job, then they would put something a bit more relevant to that in there. So I wouldn't be putting game animations if I was applying to a film job, but of course I would be if I'm applying to games jobs. So definitely earlier in your career or while you're still studying, you're a bit more limited in your options of your catalogue of work, but you should always be kind of working towards that as a goal. And it's great to plan that early, especially. That's what I like to tell all my students. Try and have an idea of where you'd like to work, because then the work you do, even while you're studying or outside of the studies, you can cater towards that. So if you've got in your mind, I want to work in games, then, let's say for animation, get really good at making walk cycles, stuff that loops, things like that. So you've got to kind of do a bit of research as to what's going to show off your skills the best for the role that you want to be in.
And actually, while I think of it, a lot of young people go, well, how can I get feedback on my folio or my reel or whatever your calling card is? Because you will apply for a job and a lot of the time you'll get rejected and you won't get feedback. And the reason is that people who are looking at your work do not have time to give you feedback, much as they would really love to. There is a website called The Rookies, which is actually international, but it's based here in Adelaide, oddly, so we're very lucky. I think it's www.therookies.co, I think, from memory. And it is specifically set up to help young artists get feedback on their work from professionals. And professionals from all over the world. So I would suggest that if you're starting out in the industry and you're starting to build that body of work, to go to the Rookies, to sign up. They do things like they run competitions, which you can get feedback from. You can win internships. It's a really good way to sort of also join a community of like-minded people who you can learn from as well. So that's a really good thing to do. Once you've got a base level of skill set, I would suggest, so you would probably need to sort of have the skills to sort of get to a certain level. So perhaps be a graduate or in your final year or something like that, and then go in, have a look and see if you can join that community there. It's also a really good way of making yourself visible.
I guess I'd add to that. There's a lot of Discord communities as well. There's several for environment art that I know of that are also invaluable because they're often populated by people who are in the industry, whatever stage. Like there's some that are have worked all the way up to technical directors even, or art directors and stuff. And so joining those and posting in their work in progress channels or like, or even just like they have job listings, they have everything. So like, seeking out those communities as well is also a really good resource, I think.
Excellent. That has brought us very neatly to the end of our panel. You've all spoken brilliantly on this. Thank you very much. We don't have a Q&A segment, but we will stick around down here if anyone has any questions for anyone here. Big Ant has a table in the showcase hall. Kirsty, if anyone would like to find out, if anyone would like to find out more about Supaglu and what you do there, where should they go online?
To our website, which is Supaglu, supaglu.com.au, and that lists all of our current jobs. If you want information on finding a job, you can sign up to our newsletter. We've got one specifically for job seekers and candidates, which is different to the one that we have for studios, and we put job hunting tips in there, and we send out one a month. So feel free to sign up to that.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, everyone. If we could all cheer for our panelists. Excellent. Thank you. And enjoy Sage.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.